What if humanity's greatest weakness turned out to be its most terrifying strength? Today we delve into an extraordinary tale of resilience, revenge, and revelation, a story of the day aliens learned that human bones don't just break. They come back stronger. The year 2147 marked humanity's darkest hour. The skies over Earth split apart in fiery streaks as the Zerithians, a towering insectoid species, descended with precision and brutality. The invaders hailed from a distant star system, their sleek obsidian ships tearing through Earth's atmosphere like blades through silk. They weren't here to negotiate or observe, they came to dominate. The Zerithians were a war-hardened species, their bodies encased in armor like exoskeletons, their limbs designed for crushing and slicing. To them, humanity was an insignificant species of flesh and bone, unworthy of respect or mercy. They had conquered countless worlds before Earth, and their approach was always the same: break the will of the natives by breaking their bodies. The invasion began with surgical precision. The Zerithians targeted Earth's strongest warriors, first elite military units stationed in critical defense zones. Human soldiers, clad in their most advanced combat gear, found themselves facing an enemy that seemed unstoppable. Zerithian shock troops landed amidst Earth's defenses, their claws and weapons ripping through steel and concrete alike. Their strategy was simple but effective: crush resistance by demonstrating humanity's fragility. In the first days of the invasion, reports from the front lines painted a grim picture. Soldiers, once hailed as Earth's best hope, were being incapacitated with terrifying ease. The Zerithians didn't just kill, they maimed. They snapped bones with deliberate cruelty, leaving human warriors writhing in agony as a warning to others. Videos of these brutal acts circulated quickly, spreading fear and despair. The message was clear: humanity's brittle bodies were no match for the invaders' strength. The Zerithians viewed Earth's inhabitants as a curiosity at best, pests at worst. In their arrogance, they observed human anatomy and dismissed it as weak and inefficient. Their scientists noted the frequency of fractures and injuries in humans' evidence. They thought of a species too fragile to withstand the pressures of the galaxy. Compared to their own exoskeletons, which could deflect even high-powered projectiles, human bones were laughable. The invaders believed their conquest would be swift, a mere footnote in their empire's history. But they failed to notice something crucial. Humanity had faced hardship and adversity for millennia. Though their bodies were not as tough as the Zerithians, their resilience was unmatched. Humans didn't just endure pain, they learned from it. Every injury was a challenge to overcome, every setback an opportunity to adapt. As the Zerithians pressed deeper into Earth's cities, strange patterns began to emerge. Some of the soldiers who had been injured in the initial assaults were returning to the battlefield. Despite broken limbs and fractured ribs, they fought with a renewed ferocity. Reports began to trickle in of soldiers surviving injuries that should have incapacitated them. Their bones, once shattered, seemed to heal faster than expected, denser, stronger, more resistant. The Zerithians were too busy celebrating their early victories to notice the change. They didn't realize that their brutality was fueling something extraordinary. Humanity's greatest perceived weakness was about to become its most terrifying strength. The first hints of humanity's hidden strength emerged in whispers, reports from the battlefield that sounded more like myths than reality. Soldiers who had suffered devastating injuries, shattered legs, broken arms, fractured spines were returning to fight stronger than before. It wasn't just bravery or desperation that brought them back. It was something more profound, something biological. In underground research facilities and hidden labs scattered across the globe, scientists worked tirelessly to understand what was happening. Humanity's survival depended on answers. At first, the data was puzzling. Soldiers whose bones had been broken and repaired weren't just recovering, they were becoming physically superior. Tests revealed that their bones were now more resistant to stress, able to withstand impacts that would previously have caused catastrophic injuries. The breakthrough came when researchers examined the microstructure of healed bone tissue. Human bones, they discovered, were far more than rigid support structures. They were living, dynamic systems, constantly adapting to stress and damage. When a bone fractured, the body didn't just repair it, it rebuilt it stronger, reinforcing the area with additional calcium and collagen. The process was like fortifying a damaged wall with steel beams. The scientists dug deeper, and what they found was extraordinary. Bone healing wasn't just a repair mechanism, it was an evolutionary response. Over millennia, humans had developed the ability to adapt to injuries in ways that made them more resilient. Each fracture acted as a catalyst, triggering a biological upgrade. It was an ability no other species on Earth possessed to the same degree, and it was now humanity's greatest weapon against the Xerithians. But the phenomenon wasn't limited to physical changes. The psychological impact was equally profound. For the Xerithians, pain was a deterrent. Their exoskeletons rarely failed them, so when they did, it was catastrophic. They had never evolved to endure or overcome trauma, they simply avoided it. Humans, on the other hand, had been shaped by pain for thousands of years. Every broken bone, every injury, had become a lesson in survival. On the battlefield, the results were becoming undeniable. A soldier who had once been unable to carry heavy gear due to a fractured arm now wielded heavier weapons with ease. A runner who had broken a leg in combat returned faster and more agile than ever. The Xarithians began to notice these anomalies, but they couldn't comprehend the science behind them. Their own bodies were static, unchanging. They had no concept of biological adaptability on this scale. The scientists realized this wasn't just a fluke, it was humanity's evolutionary edge. Every act of brutality the Xarithians inflicted was accelerating the process. Broken bones healed stronger, minds hardened against fear, and bodies adapted to endure greater challenges. Humanity wasn't just surviving the invasion, it was evolving through it. In hidden bunkers and secret military bases, strategies began to shift. Injured soldiers were no longer sidelined but celebrated. They were living proof of humanity's unique power to turn weakness into strength. The Xarithians, in their arrogance, had unwittingly triggered a transformation they couldn't hope to control. What they saw as fragility was, in fact, the seed of their undoing. As the scientists shared their findings with military leaders, a grim understanding settled over them. The Xarithians thought they were breaking humanity, but in reality, they were forging something unbreakable. The invaders had underestimated not just the human spirit, but the very biology that underpinned it. The day would soon come when the Xarithians would realize their mistake, but by then, it would be far too late. The Xarithians had underestimated humanity in every conceivable way. Their campaign of domination, which had succeeded so effortlessly on countless other worlds, was beginning to falter. At first, the cracks in their strategy were subtle, isolated reports of skirmishes where human forces held their ground against impossible odds. But as the weeks passed, those isolated victories began to multiply, forming a pattern that the Xarithians couldn't ignore. In the smoldering ruins of Tokyo, the invaders faced a moment that would forever alter the course of the invasion. The Xarithians had deployed a battalion of their shock troops, armed with energy lances and supported by towering war machines. Their orders were simple: crush the human resistance and make an example of one of Earth's last standing urban strongholds. When the assault began, the humans seemed to be at their limit. Civilians had been evacuated into underground shelters, and the remaining soldiers were battered and outnumbered. The Xarithians marched through the city streets, confident in their inevitable victory. But what awaited them wasn't surrender, it was something far more dangerous. The human defenders were not like the soldiers the Xarithians had faced before. Many of them bore the scars of previous battles, arms that had been fractured, legs that had been crushed, ribs that had been shattered. These injuries should have left them weakened, but instead they had returned to the battlefield stronger, faster, and more determined. The first wave of Xarithians fell in a coordinated ambush. Human soldiers, wielding improvised weapons and salvage technology, struck with precision. To the Xarithian shock, their energy weapons designed to incapacitate with brute force failed to stop the humans. Blasts that should have sent soldiers flying only seemed to slow them momentarily before they regrouped and charged forward. The Xarithian commanders observed the battle from a distance, their confusion growing with each passing minute. These humans fought like something out of legend, shrugging off injuries that would have incapacitated any other species. Soldiers with recently healed fractures seemed to move with greater confidence, their movements fluid and precise. Even as they sustained fresh wounds, they refused to fall. The turning point came when a group of human soldiers, led by a sergeant who had survived dozens of injuries, stormed one of the Xarithian war machines. With sheer determination and ingenuity, they overwhelmed its defenses, using their reinforced bodies to scale its towering frame. The sergeant, whose arm had once been shattered in combat, used that same arm, now nearly unbreakable, to punch through the machine's control panel, rendering it useless. As the war machine toppled, the Zarethians realized they were no longer fighting mere mortals. These humans were adapting in ways the Zarethians couldn't comprehend. Every injury inflicted only seemed to fuel their resolve. What the Zarethians had intended as acts of dominance had become the crucible through which humanity was evolving. By the end of the battle, the Zarethians had been driven out of Tokyo. The loss was more than strategic, it was psychological. For the first time, the Zarethians felt fear. They had come to Earth expecting to break a fragile species. Instead, they had awakened a force they couldn't control. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were becoming something new, something stronger, something unstoppable. And the Zarethians, once so confident in their superiority, began to understand the depth of their mistake. The Zarethian High Command, stationed in orbit aboard their colossal mothership, had grown increasingly uneasy. Their invasion was supposed to be swift, efficient, and overwhelming. Humanity, with its fragile organic bodies and primitive technology, should have fallen in days. Yet weeks had passed, and the humans were still fighting harder, smarter, and stronger with each passing day. Reports from the front lines painted an unsettling picture. Zarethian troops, once unstoppable, were now suffering unexpected losses. They were retreating from battles they should have easily won. Even more disturbing were the accounts of humans, who seemed to grow more dangerous the more they were injured. Commanders described soldiers with previously broken limbs using those same limbs to deliver bone-crushing blows. Others spoke of humans surviving injuries that should have been fatal, only to return to battle with an unrelenting fury. Desperate for answers, the Zarethian scientists turned their focus to human biology. They had initially dismissed humans as fragile creatures, but now they were forced to investigate what made them so resilient. What they discovered left them in shock. The scientists dissected the data they had collected on human physiology and came to a grim realization. Humans possessed a biological mechanism unlike anything the Zarethians had encountered in their conquests. When a human bone broke, the body didn't merely repair it, it rebuilt it stronger. The healing process laid down additional layers of calcium and collagen, reinforcing the bone against future damage. With each injury, the skeletal structure became more resistant to fractures. The implications were staggering. Every act of violence the Zarethians inflicted on the humans wasn't weakening them, it was making them more formidable. Injured soldiers were returning to the battlefield not just healed but enhanced. The Zarethian scientists also noted another unsettling factor, the humans' capacity for psychological adaptation. For the Zarethians, pain was an effective deterrent. Their species, evolved with nearly impervious exoskeletons, rarely experienced significant injury. When they did, the pain was crippling, a signal to retreat and avoid further harm. Humans, however, were different. They had evolved in a harsh, unforgiving world where pain was a constant companion. For them, pain wasn't a deterrent, it was a challenge. It hardened their resolve and fueled their determination. As these revelations spread through the Zarethian ranks, morale began to crumble. The soldiers, once confident in their superiority, were now gripped by fear. How could they defeat an enemy that grew stronger with every strike? How could they fight a species that turned suffering into strength? The fear reached a tipping point during a battle in the outskirts of New Delhi. A Zarethian platoon, tasked with capturing a human stronghold, found themselves facing a group of soldiers who had all been severely injured in previous skirmishes. What should have been an easy victory turned into a nightmare. The humans fought with a ferocity the Zarethians had never seen, their movements precise, their attacks devastating. When the Zarethians attempted to retreat, the humans pursued them relentlessly, using their knowledge of the terrain to corner and decimate the invaders. Word of the battle spread quickly. The Zarethians, who had once mocked humanity's fragility, now spoke of them with dread. They called them the Unbroken, a name that would later echo across the galaxy. In the shadow of their failures, the Zarethian leadership convened a crisis meeting. They had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now they were paying the price. The invasion had turned into a war of attrition, a war the Zarethians weren't prepared to fight. Their species had evolved for conquest, not endurance. But humans, shaped by millennia of struggle, had turned endurance into an art form. The Zarethians were beginning to understand the depth of their mistake, but it was too late to turn back. They had come to Earth seeking conquest, and now they were trapped in a conflict with a species they didn't understand, a species that refused to break. As the Zarethians wrestled with their growing fear, humanity was preparing to unleash the full potential of its resilience. In the underground research facilities and fortified bunkers that had become humanity's sanctuaries, scientists and military strategists worked tirelessly to weaponize what they now understood to be their greatest advantage. The discovery of humanity's adaptive biology was revolutionary, but it wasn't enough to simply survive. To turn the tide of the war, humanity needed to harness and amplify this ability. The answer lay in pushing the limits of the human body's natural processes. What had been an accidental advantage born of evolution could now be systematically accelerated. Biological engineers developed treatments that triggered the body's healing response, even in the absence of injury. Using advanced nanotechnology and biochemical stimulants, they created a process that mimicked the effects of bone trauma without causing actual harm. Soldiers underwent treatments that enhanced their skeletal density and muscle strength, preparing them for the brutal combat ahead. But this wasn't just about physical enhancement. Psychologists and neuroscientists worked to understand the mental fortitude that had kept humanity fighting against impossible odds. They found that humans weren't just enduring pain, they were using it as fuel. Soldiers who had faced the greatest hardships displayed heightened determination, sharper focus, and an almost unshakable will to win. The military began incorporating this knowledge into its training programs. Recruits were taught not just to tolerate pain, but to embrace it as a catalyst for growth. Mental conditioning exercises pushed soldiers to their psychological limits, forging them into warriors who could withstand the Zarethians' most terrifying tactics. The combination of physical and mental enhancements created a new breed of soldier humans who were faster, stronger, and more resilient than ever before. On the battlefield, the results were astounding. In the ruins of Berlin, a group of enhanced soldiers held off an entire Zarethian division for 3 days, using guerrilla tactics and overwhelming physical strength to outmaneuver and outlast the invaders. Reports of these victories spread like wildfire, inspiring hope among civilians and striking fear into the hearts of the Zarethians. The invaders couldn't understand what was happening. They had studied humanity's biology, but they hadn't anticipated this level of ingenuity. The humans weren't just adapting, they were evolving by design. For every battle the Zarethians won, the humans returned stronger, their forces bolstered by soldiers who had faced death and emerged transformed. The breaking point for the Zarethians came during the siege of Sao Paulo. A contingent of Zarethian elites, their most formidable warriors, was sent to crush the human resistance in the city. But the humans they encountered were unlike any they had faced before. These soldiers moved with superhuman speed and precision, their reinforced bodies shrugging off injuries that would have crippled lesser beings. The battle ended in a humiliating defeat for the Zarethians. Their elites, once thought invincible, were overwhelmed by the relentless human forces. For the first time, the Zarethians realized they were not just fighting a war, they were facing an extinction-level threat to their dominance. Humanity's hidden weapon wasn't just its ability to heal, it was its ability to turn every challenge into an opportunity. Pain, loss, and suffering were no longer weaknesses. They were the forge in which humanity's strength was tempered. The Zarethians had come to Earth, seeking to break a fragile species, but they had instead unleashed a force that refused to be conquered. As the Zarethians retreated from Sao Paulo, leaving behind their dead and broken war machines, one truth became clear. Humanity was no longer just surviving the invasion. It was winning. And with each victory, the Zarethians' hope of reclaiming control slipped further away. The Zarethians had never known defeat. For eons, their species had swept through the galaxy, dismantling civilizations with mechanical precision and unparalleled cruelty. They were conquerors, rulers of empires, architects of fear. But now they were learning a lesson they had never thought possible, what it meant to be hunted. As the human resistance grew stronger, the Zarethians' confidence crumbled. They had once been predators, but on Earth, they had become prey. The humans, who the Zarethians once mocked as weak and brittle, now fought with a terrifying ferocity. The invaders' advanced technology, their towering war machines, and their razor-sharp claws no longer guaranteed victory. Humanity had turned the tables. In a remote region of Siberia, the Zarethians attempted to regroup. Their forces, battered and demoralized, needed time to recover and strategize. They believed the frozen wastelands would shield them from human attacks, offering a chance to consolidate their dwindling resources. But humanity was no longer playing by the Zarethians' rules. The assault began under the cover of darkness. Human soldiers, clad in adaptive camouflage and equipped with enhanced strength and reflexes, infiltrated the Zarethian encampment. These weren't ordinary soldiers, they were the culmination of humanity's evolution, warriors whose bodies had been reforged through pain and hardship. Their reinforced bones and heightened resilience made them nearly unkillable. The Zarethians, despite their technological superiority, were caught off guard. Their energy weapons, which had once shattered human defenses, now struggled to slow these relentless attackers. Humans who were struck down rose again, their injuries healing faster than the Zarethians could process. The invaders' war machines, designed to crush opposition, were toppled by sheer human determination and ingenuity. But the humans didn't just rely on brute force. They had learned to use the Zarethians' own strategies against them. Exploiting the Zarethians' rigid hierarchy and dependence on centralized command, the humans targeted their leaders first. In a matter of hours, the encampment descended into chaos. Without orders, the Zarethian troops floundered, unable to adapt to the humans' unpredictable tactics. The Siberian offensive wasn't an isolated incident. Across the globe, similar battles played out, each one tipping the scales further in humanity's favor. In the rainforests of the Amazon, humans used the terrain to ambush Zarethian patrols, striking with precision and vanishing into the foliage. In the deserts of North Africa, enhanced soldiers withstood blistering heat and relentless attacks, outlasting their enemies through sheer endurance. The Zarethians began to realize they had made a catastrophic error in judgment. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation, for innovation, for survival. What they had dismissed as a primitive species of flesh and bone had become their greatest nightmare. As the tide of the war turned, whispers spread among the Zarethian ranks. Soldiers spoke of humans as if they were something more than mortal. They called them the immortals, creatures who could not be broken, who thrived on pain and emerged stronger from every battle. For a species that had always viewed themselves as invincible, this reversal was a crushing blow. In orbit, the Zarethian High Command watched in horror as their invasion unraveled. Every strategy, every weapon, every advantage they had relied upon was failing. They had come to Earth as conquerors, but now they faced an enemy that defied every law of war. The humans didn't just resist, they transformed, turning every injury, every setback, into an opportunity to grow stronger. The Zarethians had broken many worlds, but Earth was different. Here they faced a species that refused to yield, a species whose very biology turned suffering into strength. And for the first time in their long history of conquest, the Zarethians began to understand what it meant to lose. The invasion had started as a demonstration of Zarethian superiority. Now it was a fight for their survival. And as humanity closed in on their remaining strongholds, one question lingered in the minds of the Zarethian leaders. How could they possibly defeat an enemy that only grew stronger with every blow? The Zarethians' once mighty empire was crumbling. Their towering war machines lay shattered in fields of ash, their elite troops scattered and demoralized. The humans, whom they had sought to conquer with swift brutality, had transformed into something far more terrifying than they could have imagined. The invasion that had begun as a symbol of Zarethian dominance had become a fight for their survival. The remnants of the Zarethian High Command retreated to their mothership, the Titan of Dusk, which hovered ominously in low Earth orbit. From this vantage point, they hoped to regroup, to launch a desperate final strike that might turn the tide. But deep down, they knew the truth. They had underestimated humanity in every way, and the consequences were irreversible. On the surface, humanity prepared for the final confrontation. The global resistance had become a coordinated force, a coalition of nations, survivors, and enhanced soldiers who now fought with a singular purpose. Scientists, engineers, and strategists worked tirelessly to devise a plan that would bring the Zarethians to their knees once and for all. The answer came in the form of audacious defiance. Humanity would take the fight to space. The plan was daring, bordering on suicidal. Humanity's technology had always lagged behind the Zarethians, but they had learned to adapt, to innovate under pressure. Using salvaged alien tech and their own ingenuity, they constructed a fleet of makeshift spacecraft and armada of retrofitted cargo ships, orbital drones, and experimental fighters. It wasn't elegant, but it was functional, and it was enough. The assault on the Titan of Dusk began in the early hours of the morning. The human fleet ascended into the sky, a patchwork of vessels powered by determination and sheer defiance. The Zarethians, confident in their orbital supremacy, were slow to react. They had assumed humanity would never have the means to reach them. That assumption was their final mistake. As the human ships breached the outer defenses, the Zarethians unleashed a barrage of energy weapons. Explosions lit up the night sky, and ships were torn apart in fiery plumes. But for every ship that fell, another took its place. Humanity's forces pressed forward, their relentless will driving them closer to the mothership. On board the Titan of Dusk, panic gripped the Zarethian commanders. They had always relied on their technological superiority to crush resistance, but now they were witnessing the impossible. The humans were advancing, their makeshift fleet cutting through Zarethian defenses with brutal efficiency. The invaders' technology, once their greatest asset, was being turned against them. As the humans breached the hull of the mothership, the Zarethians prepared for a desperate last stand. Inside the corridors of the Titan of Dusk, enhanced human soldiers fought with ferocity and precision. Their reinforced bodies absorbed blows that would have killed any other species. Every injury they sustained only seemed to fuel their rage, their determination to end the war. In the final moments, the Zarethian leadership realized the depth of their error. They had come to Earth expecting to break a fragile species, to subjugate and exploit. Instead, they had awakened a force they couldn't control. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't its technology or its numbers, it was its unyielding will to survive, to adapt, to overcome. As the Titan of Dusk disintegrated in a cascade of explosions, the war came to an end. Humanity had won, not just through strategy or strength, but through sheer resilience. The Zarethians, once conquerors of countless worlds, were defeated by a species they had deemed unworthy of respect. On Earth, the survivors looked to the sky, watching as the wreckage of the Zarethian mothership burned in the atmosphere. The war had cost humanity dearly, but it had also revealed an undeniable truth: humans were more than survivors. They were unbreakable. The Zarethians would never forget the lesson they had learned on Earth, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity, forged in the fires of adversity, had emerged stronger than ever, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. And for the first time in history, the stars seemed a little closer. The invaders had taught humans one final lesson: there was nothing they couldn't overcome. Subscribe for more stories of humanity's triumphs among the stars.